So good morning from my side. Thank you for the introduction. What I'm going to present today is related to a European research project that dealt with the draping of carbon fiber parts. I will later show what this is about. Before I can step into the vision-specific topics, I need to say a few words about the background in which all this is taking place, because that's important for the understanding of why we are doing certain things in our vision sensors. We are talking about carbon fiber composite parts. These are usually high-end parts made for applications, for example, in aerospace, where you try to reduce the weight of parts while achieving the required mechanical performance. These parts are usually designed to the limit, according to the certain safety margins that you require. But the challenge is, if you design parts to the limit, then you need to make sure that they are also manufactured as designed. And this increases the need for quality control when you're manufacturing high-end carbon fiber parts. The manufacturing process for carbon fiber parts basically consists of taking the carbon fiber fabric, cutting it into pieces, draping it into a mold where the single pieces of carbon fabric are placed in a 3D mold. Then it becomes the preform, which is then fixated so that the stack of materials remains as it is. Then it goes into an oven for infusion and curing, and then you end up with the more or less finished part. Some trimming operations are usually required. So that's the, I would say, standard process that you need for carbon fiber parts manufacturing. And visual inspection is relevant in actually most of these steps of the production process. So the defects that we are typically looking for are foreign objects that are on the parts that shouldn't be there, so-called fuzzballs, which are accumulations of carbon fiber that shouldn't be there, errors in the stitching process, like as you can see down here, for example, or distortions in the fabric, as you can see here. So these are the things that are to be detected. And quality in these parts, as I said, is important. But in terms of visual inspection, carbon fiber is somehow the nightmare of any machine vision guy, because it's black and shiny. So if you try to inspect these surfaces, you've always got areas that are underexposed, areas that are overexposed, and that's very, very difficult to achieve high quality images. And I would say it's next to impossible if you just use a single light configuration, especially if the surface is not flat but in some way curved. And to address this problem, we thought about using different light configurations, creating multi-modal images, and then jointly analyzing these images in order to improve the quality of the data that you get from the images. And this works basically as it's shown here. You've got carbon fiber surface, you've got a sensor that integrates the illumination and the camera, and then you acquire a set of raw images. As you can see here from this set, sometimes these raw images look quite ugly, with overexposed areas, underexposed areas. But then you combine these images using a physical reflection model of carbon fiber parts, or carbon fibers in particular. And from using these reflection models, you can then calculate feature images. And these feature images, for example, include in-plane fiber orientation. So in this case, that's the colorful image. It shows the fiber orientation color-coded, where color corresponds to a certain direction. But what you can also extract from these images is, for example, a diffuse image component, which shows areas that have high diffuse reflectivity. You can extract areas with specular reflectivity, and a range of other image modalities as well. And the actual power of these feature images is in the fact that they correspond to physical quantities. So you exactly know what these images show, and you can easily determine whether a certain type of defect will show up in a certain image modality or not. And here I've assembled a few examples of typical defects and images that we have acquired. In the top left you see standard carbon fiber fabric with no defects. In the left image, the fiber direction is color coded. The blue one below, that's an image showing various gaps, larger gaps between the single tows of the material, or to the right, a larger gap, or actually a missing tow in the fabric, or up here, fuzz balls, which is just an accumulation of carbon fiber. And all of these pictures basically show that it's very easy to generate high contrast between the background and the actual defect, which then makes it easy to segment the defects, classify them, assess their size, and make quality decisions. Now, how is this actually implemented in sensors? We've developed a sensor which is used on the one hand for manual operation. It's got a field of view of 5 by 5 centimeters. It can be placed manually on the part. An image can be taken, and then you receive certain information about the defect, such as its size or other characteristic properties. The same sensor can also be used for automated scanning, which we do very often, as is shown in the background here, in combination with robots. That's when it's about to scan a 3D free-form surface for parts inspection, especially for the finished parts. Other variants of the sensor include sensors for the inspection of large-scale flat fabric. So this sensor is made up of a modular structure which can be actually extended to any length. Typical lengths go up to 2.5 meters, which is a typical range of fabric or size of fabric when it's manufactured. The principle is exactly the same, but it definitely needs a flat surface to work. And a third variant of the sensor, and this is what I will talk about in the remaining presentation, is a small version of the sensor, which has a field of view of about 2.5 by 2.5 millimeters. And the idea of this sensor is that it is integrated into robotic draping systems. To the right, you see a larger robot with a pretty large gripper to handle carbon fiber fabric, and the sensor is integrated into this gripper to measure fiber orientation and perform in-process quality control. Draping means the placing of the material, of the flat carbon fiber fabric, on a 3D mold. And this can range from very small parts, as you can see on the left, which are typically draped manually, up to very, very large ones where you need robots to handle large patches of material. The image on the right, for example, shows the rear pressure bulkhead of an A380 Airbus. And in order to do this robotic draping, you need to have a robotic work cell. In the framework of the project, we are particularly looking at human-robot collaboration. So there is a human in the work cell collaborating with the robot, jointly, for example, jointly transporting the carbon fiber fabric from the table to the mold, or doing the fine draping process when there are high curvature elements in the parts that the robot cannot drape. And to the right, you see a practical implementation of such a robotic work cell as we implemented it in the project in an automotive company. The heart of this robotic work cell is the gripper that's handling the material, and this gripper consists of a number, in this case up to 24 grasping units, which use suction heads to pick up the material. And each of these suction units can be individually adjusted so that once it's picked up the flat material, the single suction heads can be extended to somehow pre-shape the fabric to fit to the mold in which it's finally placed. Originally, we started using suction units for the material handling. Later on, we switched to needle grippers because these are more suitable for handling of the fragile material. And in order to give you an idea of what the draping process looks like, I'll just want to show a video. How can I turn this off?
You can exit.
Okay, here we are, perfect. then let's do that real quick. So it's just 90 seconds. These are experiments that we made at the automotive company Dallara in Italy. They are manufacturing parts for high-end automotive racing cars. That's the robot with the gripper. Here you can see how it's picking up the material. In that case, it's pre-preg carbon fiber material with a protective foil on top. And then in the next step, it moves this material over to the mold, which you can see in the background. The brown foil on top is removed at that stage. This shows an example of a collaborative transport where the human and the robot are jointly transporting a larger patch of material, robot giving a few instructions on how the transport needs to take place and where it's going. And then the material is placed in the mold, the suction heads extend, they retract except a few ones that need to stay in place to keep the ply in the right position on the mold. Then we perform an initial quality check with the sensors that I'll talk about in a minute. And afterwards the manual draping takes place, which is just simulated here. And then you can have some final inspection where you acquire fiber orientations on the part to check whether the parts are as designed and whether there are any defects on the part. Now I'd like to say a few words about the sensors. The sensors are comparably small. They are integrated into the gripper, and each of these sensors, in this case we used 3 in the gripper, is placed at a strategic location where we expect certain fiber orientation to change or where it's important for quality control. And the sensors are also used for detecting the ply edges because the plies might move when it's picked up or when it's placed, and this allows the robot to make some, let's say, last-minute position corrections if you find any of these. This shows some experimental results and how the sensors are actually working in the process for in-process monitoring. This is the gripper, and in the center you see the sensor. These small suction heads are holding the material, and then they somehow stretch or place the material on this mold, and the sensor in the center is monitoring how the fiber orientation is changing over time. And there are actually 3 steps in this process. The first one is the fabric during pickup. And in this case, here you can see fiber orientation or fiber orientation histogram. These are angles from -90 to +90, and the blue area shows how many fibers are going in that direction. And you can see 2 very distinct pink peaks at 0 degree and at 90 degrees. And then when the single suction heads extend and pre-shape, you can see that on the one hand, that the angle or the distance between these 2 peaks is increasing, which means the material basically stays in the same position, but there is some shearing taking place between the warp and weft, and the angle between these 2 fiber orientations is increasing. And then as the material is placed, you can see that these peaks change again, which is due to the fact that the carbon fiber fabric then adapts to the 3D mold. And in this case, the distance between these 2 peaks is basically decreasing, so the shearing angle between the warp and weft of the fabric is changing again and getting smaller. We've checked the accuracy of the sensor, and under ideal conditions we found that it's somewhere in the range of 0.15 degrees, which is quite okay and sufficient for many applications. Ideal conditions in that case means it's dry carbon fiber fabric placed on a flat table in a laboratory environment. In reality, if it's a 3D part and you've got, for example, binder on the material, which changes the appearance a bit, then it's around ½ degree that you can achieve. So these are the results that we've achieved so far with our sensors. And just about the main conclusions that we've had during these developments. On the one hand, this multimodal image analysis is a somewhat powerful tool for dealing with materials that have complicated reflection properties. You can acquire physical quantities that allow you to make a very robust segmentation and detection of defects. The typical defects that you find along the production process of carbon fiber parts can be detected with that kind of technology. And in a particular process in robotic draping, it allows the monitoring of fiber orientation and adapting the process if needed. As all of this has been part of a European project, I need to mention that we are not alone in this project. There are a number of partners involved in addition to Profactor who provided use cases, various technologies that have been integrated into this collaborative work cell. Yeah, so that's the things that I could tell about DrapeBot, and I'll be open for any questions. Thank you.